Okay, hello again. This is still the hats of the 20th Century Museum, hats and more, and we're still working on trying to get through the 1900 1910 decade displays. We've been working on that. And now I'm down to the part where I'm going to show you some magazines, and I've only got one catalog of the 1910 period. And this is the 1910 book of things I've copied for my own benefit. In the last video, we sort of thumbed through it so you can see what I've done for myself so I have easier access to pages that I found interesting. So this is the 1910. This is when the dresses got shorter and fuller. They're still wearing their high button shoes though, and a lot of spats over gaits. And this is when the spiked plumes coming out of headbands began. Not in the 20s as we think, but really it started in the teen period. Everything about World War I towards the end of the decade. Over there, send your troops over there. Motoring hats. We kind of did this at the end of the last. Isn't that beautiful? This is the one catalog I have from the 1910 decade. Bella Hess here. It is just marvelous. The artwork in that magazine. Or catalog, okay. Fisk hats, okay. Oh, there was some stuff in the beginning. We went from long skirts to kind of shorter, fuller skirts. I better do it on this side. Here's our Kewpie dolls. I'm going to talk about Kewpie cutouts, and I may as well just do it here. In the magazines, the gal that invented the Kewpie doll, Rose O'Neill, would put these a page in the magazines that the kids could cut out and have little cut out paper dolls to play with. It's a pretty neat thing. Oh, this is a cute cartoon of the hobble skirts, them hopping along trying to catch a bus because they couldn't move. Their skirt was too tight. Anyway, so there's my Xerox book. But now let's start with a page I found. When I originally found this page of Irene Castle's ideas of a beautiful dance dress. I was so excited, so of course I reduced it and put it in my book. Here's a picture of Irene and her husband Vernon. They were famous dancing duo that were very popular starting in 1912 when they came up with the Castle Walk. I should have just left that out. Castle Walk in 1912. She's one of them that promoted the idea of the upright a feather at the front of your head, and movies were made about them by Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire. Anyway, so that was a catalog I was very excited about. Leathered bandos. What is that? Feathered. Oh, here's more pictures of the feathered bandos. We did just look at that. Here's the page I had found, see, and reduced it down at an antique store. I was so excited to get that. There we go, and I don't know what magazine it had come from. I can't find it anywhere, but by Irene Castle. And on the back side is just worth looking at too. Isn't that marvelous? Beautiful things. I'm going to set that aside. Okay, so that does it for my Xerox book. Oh, isn't that cool? Well, we'll have a telephone like that over here on the piano. This is February 1912 of the Ladies' Home Journal. That's sitting over there too. Okay, my only catalog is this one. Let's do it first, and then we'll start zooming through the magazines. This beautiful thing, Bella Hess, 1916 and 17. And in it, I did find, I finally looked at it hard enough, that this would be when watches came in. In this period, I knew it had to be the 1910s that they got popular, because here are a couple for sale on the pages of the catalog. Because the gals are starting to wear watches in all the pictures you see. Hair combs. I have hair combs just nearly exactly like some of these that we have looked at already. And my little mesh bag with the weirdly opening top. Now let's see if I can hone in on what I can't remember what I just read. Oh, it's got an extension gate top. So the way that opens up like a gate and closes back in. Two varieties that are nearly like the one I have. Sold for 59 cents and $1. Can you imagine? Oh, and shoes. my brown shoes in the display here that are very nearly, we looked at them just a minute ago, very nearly like this. Like this type of thing. That one exactly, yeah. There we go. Mine are brown suede. And I thought, all these boots and things, did they actually have shoes? And did they have comfortable shoes for nurses and things? I never really found comfortable shoes, but they do have at least lower heels. I thought, well, that would look like something if it'd come in white. But then I have to admit, I noticed in the display at the War Museum, the shoes they had under the mannequin of the nurse. She was wearing black shoes, so. But I got a kick out of this, a sensible shoe. It is for, if I can find it again, intended for the fleshy woman or those with fat ankles. Gosh, how delicate. For the fleshy woman. But we're still wearing, even if you buy shoes, you can still make them look like high buttons, of course, by buying gaiters, which we call spats, but I guess back then they really called them gaiters. So that was a couple of interesting things to look at. But the pages of their shoes are just marvelous. Slippers as though I have slippers just exactly like that in the chest over there, or the trunk from my grandmother. Just high, they just can't get over this high button business. Even though there are now low shoes. Look at those with fabric brocade on the side. Gorgeous, gorgeous. We could spend too much time here, but I'll go through the whole wonderful catalog kind of slowly. This is kind of geared itself towards everything women needed. There's a few things for men and children, but oh, just gorgeous. All the things here, the little kids' shoes, high button shoes for little babies. This is 1916 and 17. Gloves, did the combs. Some of our collars, we just looked at collars. Hair products, and then they get into their beautiful hats. Gosh, they gotta go be in the gorgeous skirts. They had colored pages. It's a wonderful, wonderful catalog. I'll tell you, get on eBay, buy yourself a catalog. You will never be sorry. And we used to do this in my lifetime. You'd fill out the order form, which is in here somewhere, put it in the envelope they provided, and before you know it, the mailman would bring you things. Okay, a small magazine. Otherwise, they generally are big, but McCall's in 1910 was a small magazine. Let's thumb through that quickly. I found a lot of things in here, of course, that I recognize. So there was a telephone went by. So those candlesticks telephones were definitely the common thing starting out. Alrighty, we don't want to waste too much time because we just know. Okay, we talked about this kind of out of turn. There's a Kewpie cutout. But this is the magazine of 1913 that I bought specifically to get the Kewpie cutout. And here it is for young readers. The Kewpie cutout is on page 80. So when I went to page 80, I found it had been neatly cut out. But a Kewpie cutout was something like this. I just made you a copy of it. Beautiful old magazine, though. 1913. So much information about what life really is. Or was, I should say, when you look at a magazine or a catalog. Here's another, 1913, April. This is the one that's so beautiful on the front. And then there she is going on the back. Isn't that cute? Their art was marvelous. And this was the one that was so interesting because Rose O'Neill, who drew the Kewpies and did the cutout pages, was in Italy. And there are no Kewpie cutouts in this issue because coming home on the ship from Italy, when she intended to do all of her artwork, the waters were too rough and there was no possible way to draw. Now let's see if you can get real close on that first paragraph with the M and people can read it for themselves. We're going to be serious. She apologizes. She'll have them next month. Did you get it? That's good. I just love stuff like that. I mean, life was real, for heaven's sakes. When it's too bumpy to draw, you just can't draw. Okay, let's hit these that are of the war. This is a Leslie's. It's from 1918, so we're jumping a few years, but it has a few pictures of Here's our boys in the trenches over there. There's one of those tanks, pretty similar to the one I had on that hanky of America First. And here is the crowd giving them a big cheering session as they're preparing to march off. Gotta be careful. Ugh. And here's some other things about the war. Oh my goodness, what a miserable time for the guys. Anyway, other than that, the thinker, he's thinking about grape nuts. Other than that, it's just the usual thing in a magazine. Backside grape nuts, okay. Another one with a war theme, which I think is just marvelous. This little boy in the, isn't that artwork wonderful? Anyway, it's a Saturday Evening Post from September of 16. It's got the usual things in it. They're just terrific. Here we go. We have a 1916 of the furrow. This would be something that the farmer fellows would be so interested in. Have all kinds of farming stuff. These, the Illustrated Companion, is more filled with stories. There's a few ads, but you really don't find a lot of fashion or anything in those. Good things on the back of them, though. I believe that's another one. Yeah, another Illustrated Companion. So there's always good ads. Modern Priscilla's. It's kind of the same thing, I feel like, with her. A lot of crocheting and that type of thing. Oh, I could take it out of its bag for this. If I don't take it out of its bag for this, what am I going to take it out of its bag? Oh, here's the coffee pot that I have right over here. They had electric perks. Look at that even, an electric perkin type. Okay, universal percolators. I'm not positive mine's that brand. But of course, through the ads, you do see an awful lot of what life was all about. But I think Modern Priscilla's really leaned towards needle crafts. And that's another one. 1913. So see, she's still wearing a long, flowing kind of skirt. Same thing. We can't go through it all. Okay, now here we go with Today's Housewife in 1919. And as you can see, the littlest person in the house rules the roost. Same thing again. Today's magazine for women. So all about raising your children. Look at that, the old Dutch cleanser. So I would imagine it's mostly stories, articles, artwork. They're just marvelous, all of them. And then I have a box of 1917 newspapers. Of course, we won't go through them, but that's just wonderful. That's the war years. And you see things like save your wheat, meat, fats, and sugar, and serve the cause of freedom, all of that type of thing. A Victrola ad. The victor's service to the nation at war, in the trenches, in camps, shipboards, and hospitals. For heaven's sakes, music for the soldiers. Isn't that something? This one's actually 1918, and I do have it copied in my Xerox book because 1918, I was interested in her shoes because they did have shoes when you thought it should be high button. Her shorter skirt, her fuller skirt. I almost didn't believe it when I didn't know anything about this stuff. And look at her purse. If you can hone in on her purse there. Her purse seems to have like an artwork of a little girl or something. It just doesn't seem typical for what you would think in 1918. Did you get it? Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Well, that's all we really need to do with the magazines. Back around here now, let's look at this sewing machine really fast. I'll pick up the things I threw around. Okay, I have and the candlestick, telephone, which was turned into a lamp. Here that is again on the back of my other copy of that, 1912. This was turned into a lamp, which is a good deal, because if my uncle wouldn't have pulled these out of the garbage to turn them into lamps, they would have been in the garbage, in the landfill. Come around this way, Dad. This is an old Damascus, and it's marvelous, and it's threaded to sew, and it sews. It took me a while to figure out how to thread it, because it's kind of illogical, but we got it. An old treadle machine. If I felt like I had time, I'd put fabric under there and sew it for you, but you know that a treadle, you push it with your feet up and down, and that makes that go. Anyhow, beautiful old machine. And we saw this in our 1902 catalog, remember that? Wonderful packets of needles everywhere. What's significant about this one? I don't know, but it does have a wonderful locking thing, which took me forever to remember how to open it. I don't think there's much else here. Oh, in here was a picture of my grandmother in a sewing class. Here she is on a, let's see if we get you some light. She's the one at the sewing machine right there with her watch hanging on her chain. Anyway, that was always special to me. And here I have a box of all kinds of patterns for embroidery. Let's see if I can get that door, you can see it better. Oh, just, and I don't know, the years are all old. So, I mean, I'd say they're all pre-1920. We sure don't need to look through them. And here, this looks like a pattern for what would be a hat. You know, like a bonnet or something. By the time you hook that together and fold that back and add some ties, you've made a sunbonnet, no doubt. This one seems to be the oldest. And it's some sort of a punching situation. Let's see if we can hold that up to the light. If you can see, is it working at all to see that there's holes?
Yeah, hold it still.
Okay. You know, I need a, right. Yeah. And I don't know what they did, but they used the heavy cardboard of Auburn, New York was the heavy card that they used. This is a pelican. I wish there was a way we could get a really good shot of that. I don't know how it would be. But can't do it unless we were by the window or something. Can you see any light through that?
Yeah, you just can't quite. Well, there, we're making out the picture.
Okay, it's of a girl with a big hat. And that's the deal. These fine little pointed, little points made with a needle. And apparently it somehow transferred enough of some color to something that they could embroider it. So that's kind of interesting. Don't know what to do with it. Okay, over here, here's the coffee pot that I noticed I had in advertisements in those magazines. Oh, here's my grandma at the sewing machine again. Old coffee cups. I love the old coffee cups. Old books. I'm a sucker for old books. Let's go around this way. This is a Victrola type or a record player that is probably a marriage of two things and maybe not totally authentic. But my grandkids had fun winding it up. Let's come around here to our little table. The only reason I have a violin with one string missing, it looks like, is because it was in a thrift shop for $3. So it's just, I mean, you couldn't buy one of those for decoration at the hobby stores.
It's a Stradivarius knockoff.
Oh, it's a Stradivarius knockoff. We did look in here and it does say Stradivarius, so we assume it's got to be a knockoff. But it's old. Oh my goodness, it's old. You know? But anyway, it's just a decoration. Here I have a wonderful old chair, folding chair from this time period, just and a tin that is probably from the 60s or 70s. Wonderful old chair and some old Victrola ads here that are so good, interesting. This one is advertising a certain type of needle, I believe the tungsten style needle, which when we got this Victrola, now our little fella's in the way. Maybe you come around from that side and aim this way. Yeah. Our little butler here is in the way. This Victrola is actually not the 1910 period. It's 1921 when it was made. It's got a, I think, a reproduction instruction book that went with it. And when I was reading the pages here, because we were actually playing it when we first got it. We could still wind it up and play it. But the needles get dull so fast, and we read about the new tungsten needle. The type on the back pages of this little book. Oh, I could probably try to find it. Here we are. Get the tungstone stylish, and they won't get dull. I don't remember the whole situation, but I was like, oh, if we could only get some of those. Oh, gracious, wouldn't we be lucky if we could just get some of those? Here's an ad from an earlier magazine about his master's voice. So since that's not really old, it's not really important. But anyway, I'm looking around at antique stores all the time, and there's a little Ward's box, phonograph needles, where I was lucky enough to get just some regular ones. I thought, well, we got plenty to work with now. We got all of them. And then, my gosh, it wasn't very long before I got the tungstone needles. But certainly they'd be empty. Oh, they're all there. So now we have that wonderful type of needle even, and we never play it. Who's got time? Who's got time? But there it is. Beautiful old phonograph, or Victrola. Came with records, and I've added to it records on both sides. And it was interesting to explain to the grandkids and everybody that this is the volume control right here. Remember that? Is that too loud? Turn it down. Anyway, someday we need to get some use out of it, but not just yet. And as I said, this is 1921. That's the year my sweet daddy was born. So this is the same age as he would have been if he was still here. A Victrola. And another cute picture in here. At this time, my husband's daddy was a little bit older at this time. And uncles. All these old pictures. This is a Victrola. I was going to say, isn't this piano? Oh, no, it isn't this one. All right, wrong piano. I was going to tell about my piano being a Baldwin, and when the piano mover asked what type, I said a Baldwin. And he goes, oh, that's a shame. I said, oh, honey, it's too bad you couldn't get one with hair on it. So, you know, I think we have hit. Did we ever talk about the bird cage stand that has a very fake bird in it? I think we've kind of hit all of the things that are displayed around that have to do with 1900, 1910. We will still do, if you want to take a view down here, Dad, we'll still have to do the 2 racks of clothing that are 1900 and 1910. But that will be for another day. So thank you very much. We'll see you again at the Hats of the 20th Century Museum. Thank you.